Welcome to Accra. Welcome to Accra. Give me some energy. Give me that energy. Give me that energy. I landed here last night around 6:30, and it just sort of felt different because the last time I left Accra in 2018, I told my friends I'll be back in a week, and that week has turned to almost more than 4 years. So the week is finally over. I'm really excited to have you all here today to this very important gathering. I was really excited when in April this conference was announced. I thought it was high time we come back to ground zero and pick things up from here. So I'm really excited. So what I'll be talking about to you about today is empires. Let's talk about empires. When we talk about an empire, we talk about a violent phenomenon that occurs when one kingdom or state becomes more powerful than its neighboring states. The conqueror goes on to absorb the neighboring states, either through force or unconditional surrender, usually ruling over them and using the resources from these states to continue its expansion. One common characteristic of all empires is how they do their best to keep their subject or client states poor, either by forceful extraction of their wealth and resources, constant taxes, suppression of the freedom of speech, or freedom of association, both overtly and covertly. Like everything that finds a working formula and doubles down on it, empires use that to grow very powerful. But over time, what happens with every empire is they eventually fall. And then when they fall, what happens is they become stories, they become myths, where different people talk about them in different ways or see them in different, depending on what perspective they see it from. When we look at the history of sub-Saharan Africa and Africa in general, we will find stories of many great empires, from the Empire of Ghana to the Empire of Mali to the Empire of Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Aksum Empire, and the Songhai Empire. All of these empires do not exist today. Maybe that's why you haven't heard about them. They're just stories. Many people who come from these empires do not know about this, so they do not know their roots. They do not know the greatness that they come from. So I will focus briefly on the history of empires in sub-Saharan Africa. The first recorded empire to emerge from this side of the Sahara is the Empire of Ghana. This empire was located in what is today modern-day Mali, Mauritania, and Senegal. The Empire of Ghana pioneered iron working and used that to expand their empire through military conquests. When the Empire of Ghana started trading with the Arabs, then opening the first trans-Saharan trade routes, the Arabs found that they had so much gold, a resource that was so valuable, yet available in abundance when compared to known sources around the world. In fact, before the 16th century, this region was the world's top gold producer. So much gold left Africa at that time that the Arabs and Europeans began to believe there must be a mountain of gold, a secret closely guarded by African kings. The idea was so common that it gave birth to the myth of King Solomon's mines. In reality, most of this gold was mined on the banks of the majestic River Niger and Senegal. This new trade route signaled the start of a new era for both regions, with caravans moving with goods and luxuries between them. The 14th century writer Ibn Battuta once wrote that the sizes of these caravans could get to as large as 12,000 camels, with each carrying up to 125 kilograms of goods and luxuries from the Mediterranean, while returning with gold and slaves from the Empire of Ghana. With many of its client states demanding independence, just like every empire, the Ghana Empire declined after almost 500 years of ruling. But then, one of its client states took power by seizing control of the lucrative Saharan trade routes. That was the Empire of Mali. The Empire of Mali inherited much of the wealth and power of the Empire of Ghana, but under the ruthless and effective leadership of Mansa Musa, the system of trans-Saharan trade was developed to new proportions. Mansa Musa conquered more than 20 cities at a time, creating one of the largest empires Africa had ever seen. The ancient kingdom of Mali spread across parts of modern-day Mali, Senegal, the Gambia, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, with cities like Timbuktu and Gao developed as important cultural centers. If you look at the map of Africa today, this is a very large landmass. But what will make us keep talking about someone like Mansa Musa today is because of his expensive Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca in the year 1324. He is said to have traveled with an entourage of tens of thousands of people and dozens of camels, each carrying 136 kilograms or 300 pounds of gold, totaling today's, based on today's market prices, more than half a billion US dollars. While in Cairo, Mansa Musa met with the Sultan of Egypt, and his caravan spent and gave away so much gold that the overall value of gold decreased and brought about unprecedented inflation in Egypt for the next 12 years. On his way back from his Hajj, or from his pilgrimage, he felt bad about the effect. He saw the destruction it had caused in those countries and started loaning back the gold, as much gold as he could from the people. This is the first and the last time in history that one man was known to control the price of most of the world's gold. While incredibly wealthy and influential at that time, the Empire of Mali also saw its own years of eventual decline, especially after the death of Mansa Musa. After that, we had so many empires, including the Songhai Empire, but today, there are no more. By trading gold, the early kingdoms of West Africa swelled to eye-watering wealth. The Arab writer Ibn al-Faqih once remarked in his book, The Book of Lands, that in Africa, gold grows in the sand like carrots do, and is picked at sunrise. One often neglected part of history is that these trade routes exchanged not just luxury goods and salt for gold, but also slaves. The caravans will usually go back with gold and slaves to be sold in Arab and European markets. The forceful plundering of people and resources became wars when the Portuguese arrived on the continent and started what we know today as the transatlantic slave trade, where over 12 million people were forcefully taken into slavery. The ground on which we stand today, Ghana, formerly known as the Gold Coast, became a European darling because of the large supplies of gold. The Europeans loved it so much that the Portuguese built a fort, Elmina Castle, just a few miles away from here. The Danish, the Swedes, the Dutch, the English eventually built their own castles in a scramble for gold. As this commerce grew, the Europeans began demanding for slaves as part of the trade, such that over time, the slave trade became even bigger than the original gold trade. Why is Bernard talking to you about empires today? Well, because a client state is typically ruled by a single empire, but Africa today is currently under the rule of many empires. It is a hard burden to bear. On the brighter side, I want Africans to know that it has not always been like this. The image that everyone has today is of poverty, but that's not where you come from. I want everyone to know that they had wealthy kingdoms without foreign aid or loans. I want everyone to know that we have been able to create incredible wealth for ourselves under our own leadership. I want them to feel the sense of royalty whenever another person tries to look down on them. I want you to know that we can do this again. It is important to acknowledge the economic effects of slavery if we're to truly understand the things I'll be talking about today. When my sister Farida asked me to present this keynote, I thought of many things I would like to talk to you about, so many things. Up until last night, I still wasn't sure of what to talk about. Because of the timing of this and the location of this gathering, I decided to talk about this. Having this inaugural conference in Ghana is symbolic for so many reasons. Ghana was called the Gold Coast, like I said earlier. Ghana was the first country to gain independence in sub-Saharan Africa in 1957, the African country with the highest gold production, and the African leader in the list of 14 other countries you will find in the top 50 gold-producing countries in the world today. And just to add, Ghana is the sixth largest producer of gold in the world today. Our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents fought for our independence in various African countries, as we know. While celebrations rocked our cities and hinterlands during the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, anytime one country gained independence. Finally, we're a free people, free to govern ourselves, and free to decide our political, social, and economic fate. Must have been what most of the commentaries sounded like. Over the years, we have come to realize that that is not happening and hasn't happened. The world has moved way ahead of us, despite our numerous natural and human resources. We cannot point to great economic progress for most of our people. There are, of course, so many reasons for this, but one of the most important reasons that we do not talk about is our lack of monetary independence. Political independence without monetary independence is like giving someone a train without an engine. My brothers and sisters from the Francophone part of Africa understand this and can relate to this on a deeply personal level. Our leaders, even in situations where they actually want to do good work, are subjected to or sometimes tricked into agreeing to very draconian terms in order to access financing. Financing we usually end up paying in 1,000-fold over so many years. The image is so grim when you think about it that even our unborn children are already in debt to foreign powers. It was Osagyefo Dr. Nkrumah, the man who led Ghana to its independence in 1963, who in 1963, at the inaugural summit of the Organization of African Unity, now known as the African Union, who remarked that it is important to remember that independent financing and independent development cannot take place without an independent currency. A currency system that is backed by the resources of a foreign state is ipso facto subject to the trade and financial arrangements of that foreign country. Today, if you wanted to send money from one African country to another, there's an 80% chance that it first has to go through North America or Europe before coming back to Africa. And just to rephrase, it means that if we're sending $100 billion out of Africa, at least $80 billion of that has to go through other continents before coming back to us. By doing this, we lose at least $5 billion of our sweat every year. That is a lot of money, and we shouldn't be giving that away for nothing. When millions of Africans around the world send money back home, a huge chunk of this goes through these existing financial institutions, shaving off more billions from our collective work anywhere we are. Anywhere we are in the world, we seem to be paying this sort of shadow tax to a monetary system that doesn't benefit us. Running a rough math of $100 billion in yearly remittances back to Africa on an average of 8% fee, we lost over $8 billion yearly to these alone. This is our sweat. We have to stop giving it away for free. Kwame Nkrumah put it best back then. He saw that our political freedom will not allow us to grow as a continent without our economic freedom. He once remarked in that same event that because we have so many customs and currency barriers as a result of being subject to the different currency systems of foreign powers, this has served to widen the gap between us in Africa. How, for example, can related communities and families trade with and support one another successfully if they find themselves divided by national boundaries and currency restrictions? The only alternative open to them in these circumstances is to use smuggled currencies and enrich national and international racketeers and crooks who prey upon our financial and economic difficulties. No independent African state today by itself has a chance to follow an independent course of economic development. And many of us who have tried to do this have almost been ruined, or have had to return to the fold of our former colonial masters. This position will not change unless we have a unified policy working at the continental level. The first step towards our cohesive economy will be a unified monetary zone with initially an agreed common parity for our currencies. I continue. With a common currency from one common bank of issue, we should be able to stand erect on our own feet because such an arrangement will be fully backed by the combined national product of the states composing the union. After all, the purchasing power of money depends on the productivity and productive exploitation of the natural, human, and physical resources of the nation. While we are assuring our stability by creating a common defense system, and our economy is being oriented beyond foreign control by a common currency, monetary zone, and central bank of issue, we can investigate the resources of our continent. We can determine whether we possess the largest potential in hydroelectric power and whether we can harness it and other sources of energy to our own industries. We can proceed to plan our industrialization on a continental scale and build up a market, a common market for nearly 300 million people, which today is over 1.2 billion people. In hindsight, Kwame Nkrumah was right on the money. So today, the questions are, how do we build a common central bank today? How do we start work on a common currency? How do we start work on creating common monetary zones? This sounds like a lot of work. It actually is a lot of work. If Bitcoin existed back then, he would have deeply studied it and probably ended up becoming one of its biggest proponents. The good part of it is we can use that alternative today. It combines all the things we wanted to achieve into one. The best part of it, it works on the internet, a medium of information exchange millions of people around the world are jumping on every year. The internet is a new trade route. When we think about the trans-Saharan trade routes and the transatlantic trade routes, the internet is like a new trade route. And what it does is open commerce across the world. While we still have lots of gold today, most of our gold still remains under the control of the colonial masters through their companies. But now we have something that cannot be easily controlled. Bitcoin provides a credible alternative for us to explore. Our experience with the current financial systems, which were and are still being built to not include people like us, tells us that we have to believe in ourselves and try to solve our own problems our own way. How Bitcoin has solved some of those challenges for us are practical reasons why we should be spending more time, not just understanding it, but building communities for it, products, and engaging in commerce with ourselves using it. The reality is today we get a lot of blanket bans when a few of us err. Economic decisions are made in boardrooms around Europe and Africa without thinking of the second-order effects of those on places like Africa. Most of Africa today operates in a way that only makes other currencies stronger while weakening our own local currencies. We have to ask ourselves if it's possible for someone in Nigeria to trade with a Naira with someone in Malawi using the Kwacha while that exchange is settled in Bitcoin instead of a foreign currency like the US dollar. It's absolutely possible today. I'm already seeing lots of that happening. When we pay for something using Bitcoin, we're not using the dollar at that time. So essentially, there's less demand for it. When we get paid for our services or goods in Bitcoin, there is no euro, dollar, or any other foreign controlled currency involved as far as we're concerned. We have started it. We can do more of that. I do not know the exact approach to tell everyone to take, but what I will encourage is a lot of exploration without fear, a lot of exploration with courage. We are teaching the world how to use this tool, and I hope that we continue in that regard. The recent article by the European Central Bank, where they mentioned that Bitcoin has not been used for any legal transaction, is a wake-up call for all of us to the kind of malicious thinking about anything that benefits anyone outside of the colonial powers. Only what they decide is legal is legal. This is dangerous thinking and something we shouldn't accept sitting. Take this as a call to double down on your quest for freedom. I smell a lot of fear and desperation. We have the world's youngest population, and once we can find our economic freedom, it increases our chances of starting another golden era for Africa. Many of you have flown from many different parts of the world to come here in solidarity. We're humbled and grateful to have allies in you. Allies like you worked with our forefathers to fight for our independence. I hope that you get to learn a lot from us this week that will further strengthen your resolve in joining us to fight for economic freedom for not just Africa, but billions of people around the world. The beauty about working for and on Bitcoin is that we can all work for each other. In fact, we do work for each other. The value of our collective work is reflected in the growth and value of the network. When I talk about the value, I'm not talking about the price. I'm talking about the potential it has to positively change the economic and social status of so many people around the world. The price, in my opinion, is a distraction and something we should leave for the casinos to worry about right now. To my fellow brothers and African sisters, and sisters of African descent from here and abroad, I urge you to feel a sense of responsibility. I know that sometimes you feel neglected, but I need you to please feel more responsibility, a sense of responsibility towards this cause. Because a lot of us might be young right now, the things are so bad, we might not see something working for us or in our lifetime, so at least we should try to start that fight for our future generations. Every single day we do not fight back, it means an extra day for our children to fight back. World powers fear a united people that is not in debt to them, but their fears won't stop our yearning and quest for a united continent free from wars and poverty. If anything, their fears should be an encouragement for us to walk. We are on ground. We know what is happening. We have to trust ourselves more than anyone. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep the club going. Let's keep it going. Wow. Wow.